I feel like everyone has seen a camera like this at some point, whether it's in an antique shop or in, your grandparents' basement. And it makes sense that these guys are everywhere. It's nearly as simple as a functional camera can get. It's got a lens and a shutter, and it's in a dark box. Like, how much more complicated could you get? But as history goes, we've moved past these guys. We moved from these simple boxes to rangefinders and SLRs, to mirrorless cameras and iPhones. But are these things worth shooting in our modern era? Are they easy to shoot? It looks simple enough. Should I go buy one? Great question. But first, let's take a look at how they work. This is the Sears & Roebuck Tower 43, and it's a small box with an interesting look and some really simple controls, which look like they might be challenging to shoot with. So this Sears Tower camera in particular has basically 3 controls, and I think that calling them controls is maybe a bit generous. On the side we have our shutter, which is a red lever which fires when it's pulled down. You can't change the shutter speed at all, so according to the several sources that I found online, you're stuck at around a 1/40 or a 1/50. Then we have the diaphragm, which is the aperture. It has 2 modes, in and out. And from what I can find online, it's either at an f/16 when it's in the in position or at an f/22 when pulled out. Then the last controllable part of the camera is the film winder, which is as simple as a film winder can get. Once you get your film loaded, you have to look through its tiny red hole to align the film correctly. And then once you take your shot, it is your responsibility to wind the film to the next number. Then the viewfinder is this foggy little lens on the front, which is kind of fun and it makes everything look super tiny. Lastly, the camera does have a flash port, but it's not something that I'm able to test, so we're not gonna get any flash photography today. And that's most of the camera, so I'm gonna go shoot with it. I'm a little concerned about exposing properly, so I'm going to bring my light meter with me and just kind of estimate my exposures, since honestly I don't know how much I believe a random website's details about an old camera, but I'll use those as a baseline. That way I'm hoping for at least some decent results. This should be interesting. I didn't really know what to shoot here, but since the camera has a fixed lens, I decided to take some landscapes of a local park. The Sears box has a minimum focus distance of about 7 feet, so it's really not the right camera for portraits, but I wanted to put this camera through its paces, so I made sure that I took a picture of a close-up subject and some further away subjects. But this park in particular has some beautiful redwoods that I wanted to get some shots of. They did look very dark, so I'm not sure how these are going to turn out. Okay, so I'm back from shooting, and I went ahead and developed my roll of HP5, so let's take a look at some of these results. I brought all my photos into Lightroom here, and looking kind of over this first landscape, you can see how soft this lens actually is, which I'm kind of surprised by, since most of the time, infinity is kind of like the sharpest part of the image. But you can see just the horizons are so soft here. When I took the aperture down to f/22, it does actually get way sharper. Like you can just see so much more detail in the trees and everything, which is kind of crazy to me. We have some pictures of these redwoods, which look a lot sharper, and I did shoot these at f/22. There is something interesting that I noticed, which is that in the corners especially, there's like this vignette of softness, which kind of adds to the vintage look quite a bit, which I'm super into. I think it looks super, super cool. You can see it in this photo too, especially just right along the edges and the corners here. It just gets so soft. And then the last photo I have here is this trash can photo, which I took so I could have something to reference like a closer up subject. So I was about 10 feet away from this trash can. And this is where I'm starting to notice some of that 1/40 shutter peeking through, right? You can see a lot of just kind of shakiness in some of this detail down here, which tells me that I really probably want to shoot this camera on a tripod or something, especially if I am getting a closer up subject like this trash can. But the camera doesn't have any tripod screws in the bottom, so that's a little harder to do. So looking at all these photos, I'm really trying to think about what I would actually use this camera for and more than just a test. And I am struggling to come up with any ideas. I do have one thought, which it could be somewhat interesting to try maybe taking some like full body portraits just so you get that distance from the subject, and then doing contact prints. Because this camera has such a big negative, you kind of get like a wallet size print out of this, which I think would work. But yeah, I'm struggling to find any other applications for a camera like this kind of in our modern day, when there's a lot of film cameras that can give me some interesting effects, or even the same effects a little bit easier. So overall, I'd say this is a really interesting camera. It's a cool thing to have on my shelf and in my collection, but I don't necessarily see myself using it for much unless I knew something specific that I wanted to do with it. Like, I could see myself coming up with an interesting project to use it for, but it's definitely not going to be a daily use camera for me. But those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments below if you have any cool photo project ideas that I could use this camera with, or that you would like to use a box camera for. I might have one idea, so maybe I'll post more about that later. We'll see. Thanks for watching.